here is the removal process for the optical pickup M holder on the CLD D504 and a handful of other players that use the same pickup. You'll notice this player does not have a tray in it right now because this is a donor player that I took a spindle motor out of. Nonetheless, step one, 2 screws on either side. You can take the case off. You should have it plugged in at this point. At this point, you would hit eject if the tray was still in it. And with the tray sticking out, unplug it. So that way you have access to the optics that would normally be blocked by the tray. So you unplug it, and then there's 4 screws that normally live here that hold the upper disc clamp. And then you will have, here's the old spindle motor that was out of this. This lower disc clamp will kind of be hanging out in this area right here. So it'll partially obscure the optical pickup, but you'll still be able to see what I'm talking about. And actually, it's probably even better that I don't have it so you can see. But here's the M holder that we're trying to get off. So this whole optical transport is only held in by, if you'll see right here, this is the track, what would you call this? The polished rod that it travels along. That, if you can see, there's a little bit of flex there. This is usually popped down in there. Actually, here, it's just popped down like that. And so in order to get it out, all you really need to do is take a screwdriver. Remember, this should be unplugged at this point so you don't accidentally zap yourself, and just gently pry up. That wasn't quite so gentle, but gently pry up and the rod will pop out of place. And let's see if I can show you where it hooks in the back. Right back here, you can see where the silver stops, and it slots onto, I will move it so you can see right there, it slots onto a little plastic nub. Let me see if I can zoom into that. So this silver part is just, it's a hollow tube, and the tube just slips over that little nub, and that's the only thing that holds this whole transport in place. And so when the Laserdisc player first turns on, the optics will be parked all the way forward, if I recall correctly. And so all you have to do is unclip that, and then there's a ribbon cable on the back here, which this whole thing, because this whole thing's been disassembled on mine, it's all kind of precarious. This will be in a little more firmly, but all you have to do is kind of wiggle it back and forth, and this ribbon cable will come out. You can see, goodness gracious. You can see it's just a little flat blade ribbon connector. It's not especially delicate. I just wiggle it back and forth a little bit. It's weird because it's wide. It's kind of firmly in there, but it's not like they're delicate little pins that are going to snap on this. So just be careful with it and wiggle it back and forth. At that point, you can kind of, it's hard to do this with one hand, you can kind of just lift the whole transport up. The lower disc clamp is going to kind of be in the way, so you're probably going to have to like weasel it out through the side over there, but nonetheless, it can come out. And then we're left with the M holder, which I have mine disassembled. There's 2 little screws, 1, 2, right there. You would take that off, and then that would free it up like so. And then there's a ribbon cable on the back of this motor, and there's 2 screws, bolts that go through the bracket into the front of the motor. And if you take that off, then you have your part. And you can see on here, this is where the spindles always break. Here's one of them that's still intact, and there's another one down there that's supposed to be there but snapped off. And so this would be the part that you would be repairing or replacing. While you have this whole thing off, if you'll notice, this is the lubricant that was on there is very gummy at this point. So I would use this as an opportunity to, also with some denatured alcohol, to clean this thing, and then maybe take a Q-tip and run it through this linear bearing on here, just where the track slides there, and slap some new grease on that before you reassemble. And reassembly is backwards to that. You just weasel the whole thing back in there. One thing of note, you'll notice on the end of this rod, you'll see how the edge of that has a little, it's slightly rounded over. And this edge is not so slightly rounded over. The slightly rounded over end needs to be facing forward. You put that back on there, all nice and nice, lubed up. You stick it back in there, hook the end of the tube onto the little nub back there, snap it back into here, put the ribbon cable in, put the upper clamp back on there, and I would probably at that point, before you put the case back on, plug it back in, close the drawer, make sure everything's working fine, play a disc just in case you assembled something wrong before you go through the trouble of buttoning it all back up, then you should be in business. So anyway, there you go. That is how you would remove the M holder from a CLD D504 or equivalent.